The moment I heard my own husband's voice boom through our bedroom door that morning, "You will set that table, and you will get on your knees and apologize to my mother before she sits down to eat," something inside me shifted. Not broke, shifted. Like a gear clicking into a position it had never been in before. I stood there in my bathrobe, mascara from last night still smudged under my eyes, holding a coffee mug that said, "World's Best Wife" in chipped gold letters, and I felt the strangest calm wash over me. Not peace, not acceptance. Something colder, something that had been building for 3 years and finally found its shape. He wanted me to apologize. He wanted me to set the table with the nice plates, his mother's favorite, the white ones with the blue rim that she'd gifted us for our wedding, and never let me forget cost $400 for the set. He wanted me to stand at that door at noon, smile pretty, and tell Karen Mitchell that I was sorry for not handing over $3,000 from my personal savings account. $3,000 I'd been putting away, $50 at a time, from my freelance graphic design work. Money that had nothing to do with Brandon. Money that was mine. "Do you hear me, Ashley?" he said through the door. "This isn't a discussion." I took a sip of my coffee. I set it down on the dresser, and I started planning. But I need to back up, because if I start here, you'll think I married a monster. And the truth is more complicated than that. The truth is that Brandon Mitchell was, for a long time, the best thing that ever happened to me. And that's what makes all of this so much worse. I met Brandon in the spring of 2019 at a Home Depot in Scottsdale, Arizona. I know, not exactly a romantic comedy meet cute. I was 26, trying to figure out how to fix a garbage disposal in the apartment I'd just rented after moving from Ohio. I'd watched 4 YouTube tutorials, bought what I thought were the right tools, and was standing in the plumbing aisle looking like someone had asked me to defuse a bomb. He was 30, wearing a faded ASU t-shirt and cargo shorts, and he had this easy smile that made you feel like you'd known him for years. He saw me staring at 2 identical-looking wrenches with genuine panic on my face, and he laughed. Not at me, with me. There's a difference, and back then, Brandon knew it. "You look like you're having a day," he said. "I'm having a whole week," I told him. He helped me pick the right wrench. Then he offered to come fix the disposal himself because, his words, "You're going to flood your kitchen and I'll feel responsible." I said no, obviously. I didn't know this man. But he gave me his number, told me his name, and said, "Call me when you're ankle deep in water. I'll be around." I flooded my kitchen 2 hours later. I called him. He came over, fixed it in 15 minutes, and then we sat on my kitchen floor eating pizza from Domino's and talking until 1 in the morning. He told me about growing up in Mesa, about his dad who left when he was 12, about his mom who raised him and his sister Jennifer alone on a medical receptionist's salary. The way he talked about his mother, with this deep, almost sacred reverence, I thought it was beautiful. I thought, here's a man who respects women. Here's a man who understands loyalty. God, I was so naive. We dated for a year and a half. And listen, those 18 months were genuinely wonderful. Brandon worked as a project manager for a mid-sized construction company, pulling in about $72,000 a year. I was doing freelance graphic design, making around $45,000 if I hustled. Together, we weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We split dinners. We took weekend trips to Sedona. He remembered that I liked sunflowers and would bring them home on random Tuesdays for no reason at all. He proposed on Christmas Eve 2020 in my parents' backyard in Columbus during a visit. My mom cried. My dad shook his hand and said, "Take care of my girl." Brandon looked him dead in the eye and said, "I will, sir, every single day." We got married in March 2021. Small ceremony, 40 guests, a little venue outside Phoenix with string lights and desert flowers. I wore my grandmother's pearl earrings. Brandon wore a navy suit that made his blue eyes look electric. When he said his vows, his voice cracked on the words, "I promise to always put us first." And I remember thinking, this is it. This is my person. For the first year of marriage, it really was good. We rented a 2-bedroom house in Gilbert, a suburb east of Phoenix. Nice neighborhood. HOA kept the lawns immaculate. Neighbors waved when you drove by. The kind of place where people left Amazon packages on porches without worrying. I set up my design studio in the spare bedroom. Brandon commuted 40 minutes to his office and never complained. We had a system. Joint account for bills, mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance. Each of us kept a personal account for our own spending. This was my idea, and Brandon agreed to it easily. "I trust you," he said. "You trust me. We don't need to micromanage each other." I put $500 a month into my personal savings, sometimes more if I landed a big client. Over time, it added up. By the beginning of 2024, I had a little over $14,000 in that account. It wasn't a secret. Brandon knew it existed. He just never asked about the balance, and I never offered it. The thing about Brandon's mother, Karen, is that she wasn't always a problem. Or maybe she was, and I just couldn't see it yet. When Brandon and I were dating, Karen was warm to me. She hugged me at every visit, complimented my cooking, told Brandon he'd found a good one. She lived about 20 minutes away in a modest ranch house in Mesa that Brandon helped her maintain, fixing gutters, mowing the lawn, replacing the water heater when it died. Normal son stuff. Good son stuff. But after the wedding, something shifted. It was subtle at first. Little comments that could have been jokes if you squinted. Like the time I made pot roast for Sunday dinner and Karen said, "Oh, that's interesting. Brandon always preferred the way I make it, but this is different." Or when I redecorated our living room and she walked in and said, "Bold choice, very bold." She'd say these things with a smile, and Brandon would laugh, and I'd tell myself I was being sensitive. The first real red flag, and I mean the kind you can't explain away, came about 8 months into our marriage in November 2021. We were at Karen's house for Thanksgiving. Her place was small but spotless, decorated with ceramic angels and framed photos of Brandon at every age. Jennifer, Brandon's sister, was there with her husband Dave and their 2 kids. It was loud and warm and smelled like turkey and cinnamon. I'd brought a pumpkin pie, made it from scratch, my grandmother's recipe, the one my family had used for 3 generations. I was proud of it. I set it on Karen's kitchen counter, and she looked at it, then looked at me and said, "Oh, honey, I already made dessert, 2 pies and a cheesecake, but we can put yours out too, I guess, if there's room." I smiled and said, "The more the merrier, right?" She didn't answer. She just turned back to the stove. At dinner, when it came time for dessert, Karen served her pies first. My pumpkin pie sat on the far end of the counter, untouched. No one took a slice. Not because they didn't want to, but because Karen controlled the flow of that kitchen like an air traffic controller. She handed out plates with her slices already on them. When Jennifer's husband Dave reached for my pie, Karen said, "Oh, Dave, you haven't tried my pecan yet. You have to try the pecan first." My pie went home with us that night, almost completely whole. Brandon ate a slice in the car on the way home and said, "This is incredible, babe. Mom just gets weird about her kitchen. Don't take it personally." I didn't. Not then. But the moments kept accumulating, like snow on a roof, each one weightless on its own. Together, they were building towards something heavy enough to cause a collapse. Karen started calling Brandon every single evening at 7 p.m. If he didn't answer, she'd call again at 7:05. Then 7:10. If he was in the shower, she'd text me, "Is Brandon okay? He's not picking up." She'd show up unannounced on Saturday mornings with grocery bags, saying she'd just happened to be in the area and bought us things we didn't need. Off-brand cleaning supplies, expired coupons, vegetables we'd never eat. And the money requests started small. $20 here for a prescription copay, $50 there because her car needed an oil change and she was a little short this month. Brandon always said yes, always pulled out his wallet or Venmo'd her without hesitation. And I understood. She was his mom. She'd raised him alone. He felt a duty. I respected that. I really did. But by the middle of 2023, the requests weren't small anymore. Karen needed $800 for a plumbing emergency. Then, $1,200 because her property taxes had gone up and she hadn't budgeted for it. Then $500 for Jennifer's kid's birthday party because family helps family. Each time, Brandon pulled from our joint account. Each time, I bit my tongue a little harder. Then came the conversation that changed everything. It was a Tuesday night in January 2024. Brandon and I were sitting at the kitchen table going over our monthly budget on a shared spreadsheet. I noticed a $1,500 withdrawal I didn't recognize. "What's this?" I asked, pointing at the screen. Brandon didn't look up from his phone. "Mom needed help with her heating bill, plus some groceries. It's been a rough winter for her." $1,500 for heating and groceries? She's on a fixed income, Ash. Brandon, that's the third time in 2 months we've sent her over $1,000. We've given her almost $4,000 since October. He finally looked up, and there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger exactly, but a warning, a border I wasn't supposed to cross. "She's my mother," he said. "She sacrificed everything for me. If I can help her, I'm going to help her. End of discussion." It wasn't end of discussion, not for me, but I let it go that night because I was tired and I loved him, and I still believed we could work through anything with enough patience. That was the lie I told myself every night before bed, like a prayer I was losing faith in but kept reciting out of habit. And then, 3 weeks later, on a freezing February morning, Karen called. Not Brandon, me. She called my phone directly, which she almost never did. I picked up, and her voice was sweet. Too sweet, like syrup poured over something rotten. "Ashley, sweetheart, I need to ask you something, and I want you to hear me out before you say anything." My stomach tightened. "Okay, Karen, what is it?" "I know you have your own little savings account. Brandon mentioned it. And I'm in a bit of a bind. My car needs a transmission repair, and the mechanic quoted me $3,000. I was wondering if you could help me out. Just this once." The silence that followed lasted maybe 5 seconds, but it felt like 5 minutes. $3,000 from my personal account, the money I'd saved dollar by dollar from late nights designing logos and branding packages and social media templates for small businesses. Money that had nothing to do with Karen Mitchell or her son. "Karen," I said carefully, "I'm not comfortable with that. That account is my personal emergency fund. I think we should look at other options, maybe a payment plan with the mechanic or—" "I see," she said. And just like that, the syrup was gone. Her voice went flat and cold, like a door slamming shut. "I'll talk to Brandon." She hung up. And I sat there in my home office, staring at my phone, knowing with absolute certainty that a storm was coming. I just didn't know it would arrive at noon on a Saturday, wearing a floral blouse and carrying a casserole dish, expecting me on my knees. That phone call was on a Thursday. By Friday evening, the storm had made landfall. Brandon came home from work that night with a look on his face I'd seen maybe twice in our entire relationship. Once, when a coworker had badmouthed his mother at a company barbecue, and once when I'd accidentally donated a box of his childhood baseball cards to Goodwill. It was a look that said someone had committed a crime against the natural order of his universe, and that someone was going to answer for it. He didn't even take off his boots. He walked straight into my office where I was finishing a logo redesign for a bakery in Tempe, stood in the doorway, and said, "You told my mother no." Not a question, a verdict. I saved my file, closed my laptop slowly, turned to face him. "She asked me for $3,000 from my personal account, Brandon. Yes, I told her no." She's 62 years old, Ashley. She drives a 2011 Honda Civic with 140,000 miles on it. The transmission is dying. She needs that car to get to work, to get to her doctor, to get to the grocery store. And you told her no. I told her to look into a payment plan with the mechanic. I told her there might be other options. I didn't just slam the door in her face. You might as well have. He stepped into the room now, and I could see the vein in his temple, the one that only showed up when he was really angry. She called me crying, Ash. Crying. My mother doesn't cry. She worked double shifts at that medical office for 15 years so I could play baseball and Jennifer could take dance lessons. She ate last so we could eat first. And now she needs help. And my wife, says no? I felt my chest tighten, but I kept my voice steady. Brandon, we've given your mother close to $8,000 in the last year alone from our joint account, money that's supposed to be for our future, for the house fund, for the life we're building together. This isn't about the joint account. This is about your account. Exactly, my account, my money. The silence that followed was the kind that changes a room's temperature. I watched something shift behind Brandon's eyes, a recalculation, like he was seeing me differently than he had 5 seconds ago. Not as his wife, as an obstacle. So that's how it is, he said quietly. Your money, my money, after everything. That's not what No, I hear you, loud and clear. He turned and walked out of the room. I heard the bedroom door close. Then the TV turned on. ESPN, volume up high, the universal mail signal for, this conversation is over, but my anger isn't. I sat there for a long time, staring at the doorway where he'd been standing. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from something worse, the dawning recognition that I was married to someone who believed my personal savings existed as an extension of his family's ATM. That my years of $50 deposits, of late nights hunched over my computer designing business cards and website headers and Instagram templates, of skipping new clothes and salon visits so I could watch that balance grow, all of that meant nothing compared to Karen Mitchell's transmission. I didn't sleep well that night. Brandon stayed on his side of the bed, back to me, radiating cold fury. At 2 a.m., I got up to get water and saw his phone on the kitchen counter, screen still lit. I wasn't a snoop. In 3 years of marriage, I'd never once gone through his phone. But the screen was right there, open to a text thread with Karen, and the last message stopped me dead. Karen, don't worry, baby. She'll come around. She has to. You're her husband. Brandon, I know, Mom. I'll handle it. Karen, that money should be yours, too. You're married. What's hers is yours. That's how marriage works. Brandon, I said I'll handle it. Karen, your father was the same way, selfish with money. Look where that got us. I set the water glass down so carefully you'd think it was made of nitroglycerin. She'd compared me to his father, the man who abandoned them, the man whose name Karen couldn't say without her lip curling. She'd put me in the same category as the worst person in Brandon's story, and Brandon hadn't corrected her, hadn't said, Mom, that's not fair, hadn't defended me at all. I went back to bed. I lay there in the dark, listening to Brandon breathe, and I thought about my grandmother, my mom's mom, Ruth, who'd been married to my grandfather for 51 years before he died. She used to say, a marriage is two people rowing the same boat. The minute one of them picks up the oar and starts hitting the other one with it, you swim to shore. I wasn't ready to swim yet, but I was starting to eye the water. The next 2 weeks were a cold war. Brandon and I moved around each other like chess pieces, deliberate, strategic, never touching. He stopped bringing home sunflowers. I stopped making his coffee in the morning. We spoke in logistics. I'll be home late. There's leftovers in the fridge. Your mom called. That last one, your mom called, became a grenade I had to handle daily. Karen was calling Brandon constantly now, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. I'd hear him in the garage or the backyard, voice low, and I knew they were talking about me. I knew because every time he came back inside after one of those calls, his jaw was a little tighter, his eyes a little harder. Then came the Saturday morning, February 24th, 2024, the day I started this whole story with. I was still in bed at 8 a.m. when Brandon barged in without knocking, which was new because we'd always respected closed doors. He was already dressed, wearing khakis and a button-down like he was going to church, which we hadn't done in months. "Get up," he said. "Mom's coming for lunch at noon. I told her you'd cook." I sat up slowly. "You told her I'd cook." "Yes, and you're going to set the table with the good plates, the ones she gave us. And before she sits down, you're going to apologize for the way you treated her on the phone." "The way I treated her? Brandon, I was polite. I said no to a financial request. That's not mistreatment." He crossed his arms. "She's been losing sleep over this, Ashley. She told Jennifer. Jennifer called me. The whole family thinks you're being selfish. Do you understand how that makes me look? My own wife won't help my mother? Your mother has received thousands of dollars from us in the past year. Thousands. And she deserved every penny." His voice cracked the air like a whip. "She raised me with nothing. Nothing. While my deadbeat father was off living his life, she was clipping coupons and working herself to the bone. So yeah, if she needs money, she gets money. That's not negotiable. What is negotiable is your attitude." I stared at him. This man standing in my bedroom doorway, telling me to get on my knees and apologize for having financial boundaries. This man who'd once said, "I trust you," and "I'll always put us first." I searched his face for the guy I'd met in Home Depot, the one who'd sat on my kitchen floor eating Dominoes and making me laugh until my cheeks hurt. I couldn't find him. "What if I don't?" I asked quietly. "Don't what?" "Don't apologize. Don't set the table. Don't perform some submission ritual for your mother's satisfaction. What then?" Brandon's face went very still. "Then we have a much bigger problem than $3,000. He walked out. I heard him on the phone immediately, voice warm now, completely different. "Yeah, Mom, noon works great. She's getting everything ready." "Yeah, I know. Love you too." I sat on the edge of my bed for a full 10 minutes, not moving. My phone buzzed, a text from my best friend Lisa. "Brunch tomorrow? That new place on Mill Avenue?" Normal. Light. From a world where people didn't get ordered to apologize for protecting their own money. And here's where I need to tell you what I did, because what I did next is the reason everything that followed happened the way it did. I didn't leave. I didn't call my parents. I didn't call a divorce attorney. Not yet. Instead, I got up, took a shower, did my hair, put on a nice blouse and jeans. I went to the kitchen, and I started cooking. But not for the reason Brandon thought. See, I had an idea. It had come to me in the shower, fully formed, like it had been waiting for the right moment. If Karen Mitchell wanted to come into my home and receive an apology, she was going to get a show. Just not the one she was expecting. I made chicken piccata, Karen's favorite, the dish she'd once told me I almost made as well as she did. I set the table with those $400 white and blue rimmed plates. I folded cloth napkins. I put out the crystal water glasses we've gotten as a wedding gift from Brandon's aunt. I even lit a candle, vanilla scented, the kind Karen always said gave her a headache, but I figured if we were performing, we might as well commit. Brandon watched me from the living room, and I could see the relief washing over his face. He thought he'd won. He thought the conversation in the bedroom had worked, that his ultimatum had landed, that his wife had fallen in line. He even came into the kitchen around 11:30 and kissed the top of my head. "Thank you," he murmured. "This means a lot to me, and to Mom." I smiled. Of course. At 11:55, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Karen drove that old Civic, the one with the dying transmission, the whole reason we were here, and it made a distinctive grinding sound when it shifted into park. I heard a car door close, then another one, 2 doors. I looked at Brandon. Who else is coming? His expression flickered, just for a second, but I caught it. Guilt, the kind that flashes across a face before the mask goes back up. "I invited Jennifer and Dave, too," he said, "and Mom might have mentioned it to Aunt Patricia." My stomach dropped. "You turned this into a family event? Brandon, you told me it was just your mother coming for lunch." "It is lunch, family lunch. What's the big deal?" The big deal. The big deal was that this wasn't a private conversation anymore. This was a tribunal. Karen hadn't just come for an apology. She'd brought witnesses. She'd brought an audience to watch me bend the knee. Jennifer, who always sided with her mother. Dave, who never said a word against any Mitchell. And Aunt Patricia, Karen's older sister, who had a voice like a foghorn and opinions like a sledgehammer. The doorbell rang at exactly noon. And in that moment, standing in my own kitchen, wearing a nice blouse and holding a spatula, surrounded by the beautiful table I'd set with plates that weren't really mine, something crystallized inside me. Not a plan, something raw, a refusal, a line drawn not in sand but in concrete. I deliberately raised my voice, loud enough to be heard clearly through the front door, loud enough that the neighbors on either side probably caught every word, and I shouted, "Come in!" Brandon rushed to the door, shot me a warning look, and opened it. Karen walked in first. Floral blouse, white capris, full makeup, hair freshly done. She'd dressed for a victory parade. Behind her, Jennifer, 33, blonde like Brandon, wearing that tight smile she always wore around me. Dave, quiet as always, hands in his pockets. And bringing up the rear, Aunt Patricia, 70 years old and already scanning my living room like a health inspector. "Oh, Ashley," Karen said, arms wide open, voice dripping with that weaponized sweetness. "The house looks beautiful, sweetheart. Something smells wonderful." She hugged me. I let her. I hugged back even. Brandon was beaming behind her, and I could read his mind as clearly as a billboard. "See? This is going to be fine." She came around. I handled it. Karen pulled back from the hug, held me at arm's length, and looked me dead in the eyes. "Now," she said, her voice dropping to that register she used when she was about to deliver what she considered wisdom. "I think we should clear the air before we eat, don't you?" I looked at Brandon. He nodded at me, a small, encouraging nod, like a trainer coaxing a dog through a hoop. Jennifer was already sitting on the couch, legs crossed, watching. Dave stood by the window. Patricia had found the recliner and was settling in like she'd bought a ticket to a show. Karen took both my hands in hers. "Ashley, honey, I know things got a little tense between us, and I want you to know I forgive you." She forgave me. She forgave me. I heard Brandon exhale behind me. Relief, gratitude, like his mother had just performed an act of extraordinary grace, like she was the one who'd been wronged and was being magnanimous enough to let it go. "Now," Karen continued, squeezing my hands, "I think it would mean a lot to everyone here if you could just say you're sorry for the misunderstanding, and we can all sit down and enjoy this lovely meal you've made. Can you do that for me, sweetheart?" The room was silent. 5 pairs of eyes on me. My husband's family assembled in my living room, waiting for me to perform contrition for the crime of saying no. I looked at Karen's hands holding mine. I looked at the table behind me, the white plates with the blue rims, the crystal glasses, the vanilla candle flickering. I looked at Brandon, whose face was practically glowing with anticipation. And then I looked at my phone, sitting on the kitchen counter. The phone that had a banking app. The banking app that showed my savings account. The account with $14,000 in it. Money I'd earned, dollar by dollar, night by night, design by design. I took a breath so deep my lungs ached. And then I opened my mouth to speak. But before I could get a single word out, Patricia, Aunt Patricia, who had been quiet for all of 90 seconds, which might have been a personal record, leaned forward in the recliner and said, "You know, Karen told me you've been keeping a secret bank account from Brandon. Is that true?" The room shifted. Brandon's head snapped toward Patricia, then toward me. Jennifer uncrossed her legs and sat up straighter. Even Dave looked away from the window. A secret bank account. That's what Karen had told them. Not, Ashley has a personal savings account that Brandon knows about and agreed to. Not, she's been responsibly saving money from her freelance work. No, a secret bank account. Like I was hiding assets. Like I was planning to flee in the night with a suitcase full of cash. I looked at Brandon. "Did you know she was telling people that?" His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Ash, that's not... Mom probably just..." "Brandon," my voice was steady now, dangerously steady. Did you know your mother was telling your family that I have a secret bank account? Karen dropped my hands. I didn't say secret. I said separate. Patricia, I said separate. You said secret, Patricia insisted. On the phone Tuesday, you said she's got a secret account with God knows how much in it, and she won't share a dime. Karen's face went red. Not embarrassment red, anger red. Anger at Patricia for repeating the quiet part out loud. And in that moment, watching Karen's mask slip, watching the machinery behind the performance become visible, I felt something unlock inside my chest. Not rage, clarity. I pulled my hands away from Karen and took one step back. My pulse was hammering, but my voice came out so calm it scared even me. I need everyone to sit down, I said. Lunch is ready, and while we eat, I have a few things I'd like to share with the family. They sat, all of them. Karen took the head of the table, my table, in my house, like it was her throne. Brandon sat to her right. Jennifer and Dave took the two chairs across from each other, and Patricia squeezed into the seat nearest the kitchen, already eyeing the chicken piccata like she hadn't eaten in days. I served. I actually served them, plate by plate, the way Karen liked. Meat first, then sides, then a drizzle of the lemon butter sauce. I poured water into those crystal glasses. I even refilled the bread basket when Patricia demolished 3 rolls before anyone else had touched one. And the whole time, I was smiling. Not a fake smile, something worse. A patient smile. The kind of smile a person wears when they know something no one else in the room knows yet. This is lovely, Ashley, Karen said, cutting into her chicken with surgical precision. Really, you've outdone yourself. Thank you, Karen. Now, she set down her knife, dabbed her lips with the cloth napkin, looked around the table like a CEO about to open a board meeting. I think we should address the elephant in the room. Brandon reached over and put his hand on mine. Squeezed. A prompt. A cue. My line was coming. Ashley, Karen said, I want you to know that what happened between us, the phone call, the misunderstanding about the money, it hurt me. Deeply. I lay awake at night thinking about it, wondering what I did wrong to make you feel like you couldn't help me. Mom, Jennifer started. Let me finish, honey. Karen held up a hand. I'm not angry. I'm not. I'm sad. Because I thought we were family, and family helps family. That's what I taught my children, and that's what I believe with my whole heart. She turned those gray eyes on me. Waiting. The room was so quiet I could hear the vanilla candle sizzling. Ashley? Brandon's voice, low, pointed. You want to say something? I looked at my husband. I looked at his mother. I looked at Jennifer's tight smile, Dave's blank face, Patricia leaning forward with a bread roll frozen halfway to her mouth. And I said, You're right, Karen. Family does help family. So let me help by being honest with everyone at this table. Karen's smile flickered, just a fraction, a twitch at the corner of her mouth, there and gone. Brandon and I have given you close to $8,000 in the last 12 months, I said, from our joint account. That's money that was supposed to go toward our savings, our future, a down payment on a house we've been talking about buying for 2 years. Ashley, Brandon's hand tightened on mine. Not a squeeze anymore, a grip. I'm not finished. I pulled my hand free. In addition to that $8,000, you called me directly, not Brandon, me, and asked for $3,000 from my personal savings account, an account I built over 3 years from my freelance work. And when I said no, you called Brandon crying. You told your family I was keeping a secret bank account. And now you've come to my house with witnesses to watch me apologize for having a boundary. The table had turned to stone. Nobody moved. Nobody chewed. Patricia's bread roll was still suspended in midair. That's not, Karen started. It is, Karen. It is exactly what happened. And I need everyone at this table to hear me say this clearly. I am not going to apologize. Not today, not ever. because I did nothing wrong." The silence lasted 4 seconds. Then Karen's face crumpled, not into sadness, into fury, and she turned to Brandon and said, "Are you going to let her talk to me like this, in front of the family?" Brandon stood up so fast his chair scraped the tile floor with a sound that made my teeth ache. "Kitchen." "Now," he said to me, grabbing my arm above the elbow and steering me through the doorway. The moment we were out of sight, though absolutely not out of earshot, he leaned in close and hissed, "What the hell are you doing?" "Telling the truth. You're humiliating my mother in front of her own sister." "She brought her own sister, Brandon. She brought an audience. I didn't choose this stage. She built it." "You were supposed to apologize. That was the deal." "There was no deal. You gave me an order. There's a difference." His eyes went dark in a way I'd never seen. Not the warning look from the office that night. Something deeper. Something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. He leaned so close I could feel his breath on my face. "If you don't go back in there and fix this, Ashley, I swear to God." "You'll what?" I whispered. "Finish that sentence, Brandon. I want to hear you finish it." He didn't. He just stared at me, jaw clenching and unclenching, that vein in his temple throbbing like a second heartbeat. Then he turned and walked back to the dining room. I heard his voice shift instantly, warm, reassuring. "She's just overwhelmed, Mom. Give her a minute." I stood in my own kitchen, leaning against the counter, hands flat on the cold granite, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Years, maybe. I felt like myself. But that feeling lasted exactly 45 minutes, because here's what happened after the lunch from hell. Karen left without eating another bite. She stood up from the table, announced to the room that she had never been so disrespected in her life, gathered her casserole dish, which she'd brought as a passive-aggressive backup in case my cooking wasn't good enough, and walked out the front door. Jennifer followed, giving me a look that could have curdled milk. Dave mumbled, "Sorry," to no one in particular, and shuffled out behind them. Patricia, God help her, took one more roll before leaving and whispered to me on her way out, "For what it's worth, honey, I think you've got guts." Then it was just me and Brandon. He didn't yell. That would have been easier. Instead, he sat on the couch, put his head in his hands, and said, "You just destroyed my family." "Brandon, I told the truth. You ambushed my mother, at her age, in front of Patricia, who's going to tell everyone she knows. By tomorrow, every person in my family will think my wife is a heartless, money-hoarding—" He stopped himself, pressed his palms into his eyes. "Say it," I said. "Whatever word you were about to use, say it." He looked up, and the man looking at me wasn't angry anymore. He was cold, calculated, decided. "I want you to transfer $3,000 to my mother's account by Monday," he said, "and I want you to call her tomorrow and apologize. A real apology, not whatever that performance was." "No." "Then I'm moving into the guest room, and we're going to have a very different conversation about the future of this marriage." He stood up, walked past me without touching me, and closed the guest room door behind him. I heard the lock click. That night, I slept alone in our bed for the first time since we'd gotten married. The sheets still smelled like his cologne, something woodsy and warm that I used to bury my face in when I couldn't sleep. Now it made my stomach turn. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Jennifer. A text from a number I didn't recognize that turned out to be Patricia's. "Karen is telling everyone you screamed at her. Just thought you should know." And a voicemail from Karen herself left at 9:47 p.m. that I listened to once and never again. "Ashley, it's Karen. I want you to know that I raised my son to be a good man, and a good man takes care of his family. What you did today, refusing to help, embarrassing me in front of my own sister, that tells me everything I need to know about your character." I told Brandon when he started dating you that something was off. I should have trusted my instincts. You can keep your precious savings account, but you've lost something money can't buy. You've lost this family's respect. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding my phone, and I cried. Not because Karen's words hurt, though they did, like a blade slipped between ribs, but because I realized I was completely alone. My husband was behind a locked door 20 feet away, and he might as well have been on the moon. My in-laws had closed ranks against me. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, was that tiny voice in the back of my head whispering, "Maybe they're right. Maybe you should have just given her the money. $3,000 to save your marriage. Was it worth it?" That voice kept me up until 3 a.m. Sunday was worse. Brandon emerged from the guest room at 7 a.m., made his own coffee, a first in our marriage, and left the house without telling me where he was going. He came back 4 hours later smelling like Karen's perfume and carrying a Tupperware container of her pot roast. He put it in the fridge without a word and went back into the guest room. On Monday, I got a text from Jennifer. "Mom is devastated. She couldn't sleep all weekend. I hope you're proud of yourself." On Tuesday, Brandon told me he'd talked to someone about our situation. I asked who. He said, "It doesn't matter. What matters is that you need to make this right." On Wednesday, I found out who someone was. I came home from a coffee meeting with a client to find Karen sitting in my living room, in my house, on my couch, drinking tea from my mug. Brandon was next to her. "How did she get in?" I asked, standing in the doorway with my laptop bag still on my shoulder. "I gave her a key," Brandon said. 3 words. I gave her a key. To our house. Without asking me. Without telling me. "Ashley, sit down," Karen said, patting the cushion next to her like she was inviting a child to story time. "We need to talk about this like adults." "You gave your mother a key to our house," I said to Brandon, not moving from the doorway. "She's family. She should be able to come and go. This is my home." "It's our home," he corrected. "And in our home, my mother is always welcome." I looked at Karen, sitting there with her tea and her patient smile, and I understood something with absolute bone-deep clarity. This wasn't going to get better. There was no conversation, no compromise, no therapist's office where this would resolve. Karen had her son, and her son had chosen. The only question left was how long I was going to stand in the doorway of my own life, watching someone else rearrange the furniture. I didn't sit down. I turned around, walked to my office, and closed the door. I opened my laptop, and for the first time, I typed 4 words into Google that I never thought I'd type. Divorce attorney, Scottsdale, Arizona. But then something happened that changed the trajectory of everything. My phone rang. Not a Mitchell, not Lisa. The caller ID said, Mom. My mother, Diane, calling from Columbus, Ohio at 4 p.m. on a Wednesday, which she never did because she worked as an office manager at a dental practice until 5. Mom, everything okay? Ashley, honey, your friend Lisa called me. My blood went cold. Lisa called you? Why? Because she's worried about you. She said you canceled brunch. You haven't returned her texts in 4 days. She said you sounded wrong the last time she talked to you, and she didn't know what else to do. I opened my mouth to say I was fine. The word fine was right there, loaded and ready. But what came out instead was a sound. Not a word, just a sound. A cracking, splintering thing that came from somewhere below my ribs. And then I was crying. Really crying. The kind of crying where you can't breathe and you can't see and you don't care who hears. My mother listened. She didn't interrupt. She didn't say calm down or it can't be that bad. She just breathed on the other end of the line, steady as a metronome, until the worst of it passed. Then she said, very quietly, tell me everything. So I did. Every detail. The money requests, the phone calls, the Thanksgiving pie, the $8,000 from the joint account, the $3,000 demand, the apology ambush, the guest room, the key. All of it pouring out of me like I'd uncorked something that had been pressurized for years. When I finished, the line was silent for 10 seconds. Then my mother said something I will remember for the rest of my life. Ashley, listen to me. Your grandmother Ruth stayed in a bad marriage for 51 years because she believed rowing the same boat meant taking the beatings from the oar. She told you to swim to shore, baby. She told you that because she never did. Don't you dare make her mistake. I wiped my face with my sleeve. Mom, I just Googled divorce attorneys. Good. Now call one. Tomorrow. First thing. And Ashley? Yeah? How much is in your personal account? About $14,000. Don't you touch a penny of it. Not for Karen, not for Brandon, not for anyone. That money is your lifeboat. Do you hear me? That's your shore. I heard her. For the first time in weeks, I heard something louder than the voice telling me to give in. I hung up the phone. I sat in my office chair in the house where my mother-in-law was drinking tea on my couch with a key she shouldn't have, and I pulled up that Google search again. Divorce attorney, Scottsdale, Arizona. 14 results. I clicked the first one. A woman named Rachel Torres, family law, free 30-minute consultation. I booked an appointment for Thursday at 10 a.m. Then I opened my banking app. I checked my savings. $14,127.83. I moved $10,000 of it into a brand new account at a completely different bank, one Brandon didn't know about, one Karen couldn't whisper her way into. The transfer would take 2 business days. I closed my laptop. I looked at the closed office door behind which my husband and his mother were probably discussing what to do about me, how to fix me, how to bring me back in line. And for the first time in months, I smiled. A real one, because they had no idea what was coming. Thursday morning, 10 a.m. I sat in a leather chair across from Rachel Torres in her office on East Camelback Road, and I told her everything. She was in her mid-40s, dark hair pulled back, reading glasses perched on her nose, and she listened without interrupting, just like my mother had. But where my mom's silence was warm, Rachel's was clinical. She was calculating, assessing, building a case in her head before I'd even finished talking. When I was done, she took off her glasses and said, Ashley, I need to ask you some direct questions, and I need honest answers. Okay. Has Brandon ever physically hurt you? No. Has he threatened to? I thought about that moment in the kitchen. If you don't go back in there and fix this, I swear to God. He's made statements he didn't finish, implied things. She wrote something down. The key he gave his mother, did you consent to that? No. I found out when I came home and she was sitting on my couch. And the joint account withdrawals, the $8,000 to Karen over the past year, were those discussed with you beforehand? Some were, the bigger ones, the $1,500, the $1,200. He just did them. I found out after. Rachel set her pen down. Here's what I want you to understand. Arizona is a community property state. That means assets acquired during the marriage are generally split 50-50 in a divorce. However, your personal savings, the money you earned from freelance work and kept in a separate account, has a strong argument for being your separate property, especially if you can document that it came exclusively from your independent income. I can. Every deposit, every invoice. Good. Now the $10,000 you moved to the new bank. Smart. But I need you to keep records of everything, screenshots, bank statements, a timeline. If this goes to court, documentation is your best friend. I left Rachel's office with a folder of paperwork, a retainer agreement I hadn't signed yet, and a clarity that felt like stepping out of a fog. I wasn't filing for divorce that day. Not yet. I wanted to give Brandon one more chance. Not because I believed he'd change, but because I needed to know for my own conscience that I'd tried everything. That night, I asked Brandon to sit down with me. He came out of the guest room looking wary, arms crossed, but he sat at the kitchen table. I want to go to couples counseling, I said. I found a therapist who has an opening next week, Dr. Susan Park in Tempe. Will you go with me? He stared at me for a long time. Is this about the money thing again? It's about us, Brandon. About the fact that you've been sleeping in the guest room for 5 days. About the fact that your mother has a key to our house that I didn't agree to. About the fact that we can't have a conversation without it turning into a fight about Karen. His jaw tightened at her name. Don't say her name like that. Like what? Like she's a problem. She's my mother. She can be both, Brandon. He stood up. I'll think about it. He walked back to the guest room. Door closed. Lock clicked. He thought about it for 3 days. On Sunday night, he came into the living room where I was working on a client project and said, "Fine, 1 session, but I'm not going to sit there and let some stranger tell me I'm a bad son." No one's going to say that. We'll see. We went to Dr. Susan Park on Tuesday, March 5th. Her office was small, 2 couches facing each other, a box of tissues on the coffee table, a white noise machine humming by the door. She was maybe 60, with kind eyes and a voice that made you feel like you were being wrapped in a blanket. For the first 20 minutes, things went okay. Brandon talked about his childhood, about Karen's sacrifices, about how he felt it was his duty to support her. Dr. Park listened, nodded, validated his feelings. I could see Brandon relaxing, thinking this was going to go his way. Then Dr. Park turned to me. "Ashley, tell me about the phone call from Karen, the one where she asked for $3,000. I told her. Every detail. Brandon's face tightened as I spoke, but he didn't interrupt. Dr. Park had established ground rules at the start. When I finished, Dr. Park looked at Brandon. "Brandon, when Ashley said no to your mother's request, what was your first reaction?" "I was disappointed," he said carefully. "My mom needed help. My wife could have helped. She chose not to." "And what did you do with that disappointment?" "I told Ashley how I felt." "You told her to set the table and apologize on her knees," I said. Dr. Park held up a hand. "Ashley, let him finish." "Brandon." He shifted on the couch. "I was upset. I said things I probably could have said differently, but the point stands. She has money sitting in an account doing nothing while my mother can't afford to fix her car." Dr. Park leaned forward slightly. "Brandon, I want to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. If your mother had asked Ashley for $3,000 and Ashley had said yes, would you have expected Ashley to also apologize?" Silence. Brandon opened his mouth, then closed it. "No," he finally said. "If she'd given the money, there'd be nothing to apologize for." So the apology wasn't about a relationship rupture between Ashley and your mother. It was a punishment for saying no. The room went very still. Brandon's face flushed. "That's not, you're twisting it." "I'm reflecting what you just told me. The apology was contingent on Ashley not giving money. Remove the money, remove the need for an apology. That's a transactional dynamic, Brandon, not a relational one." Brandon stood up. "This is exactly what I said would happen. Some stranger telling me I'm the bad guy." He looked at me. "We're done here." He walked out. I heard his truck start in the parking lot. Dr. Park looked at me with those kind eyes and said very gently, "Ashley, I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you that what you described, the financial control, the forced apology, the family ambush, giving his mother a key without your consent, these are patterns. And patterns don't break because you want them to. They break because someone decides they've had enough." I drove home alone. Brandon's truck was in the driveway, but the guest room door was locked. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, staring at the garage door. Then I called Rachel Torres. "I want to file," I said. "I'll have the paperwork ready by Friday," she replied. I served Brandon with divorce papers on March 8th, 2024, a Friday afternoon. He was in the kitchen making a sandwich when I set the envelope on the counter. "What's this?" he asked. "Open it." He did. I watched the color drain from his face, literally drain, like someone had pulled a plug. His hands shook as he flipped through the pages. "You're divorcing me," he said. Not a question, a realization hitting him like concrete. Yes. Over $3,000. Over 3 years of being told my boundaries don't matter. Over $8,000 given to your mother without my full consent. Over being ordered to kneel and apologize in my own home. Over your mother having a key I didn't approve. Over being called selfish for protecting money I earned. This isn't about $3,000, Brandon. It was never about $3,000. He set the papers down. His eyes were wet. Ash, we can fix this. I'll talk to Mom. I'll set boundaries. We'll go back to that therapist. You walked out of the therapist's office, Brandon. You walked out when she told you something you didn't want to hear. That's been your answer to everything. Walk away, shut the door, let your mother handle it. I love you, he said, and his voice cracked the same way it had during our wedding vows. I felt my chest tighten. Because I believed him. He did love me, in the way he knew how. But his love had conditions I couldn't meet, and a co-signer I couldn't compete with. I love you too, I said, but I love myself more, and I should have said that a long time ago. He called Karen that night. I heard him through the guest room door, sobbing, and I heard Karen's voice on speakerphone, not comforting him, not saying, let's figure this out, but saying, I told you she was like your father. Get a lawyer, baby. Get a good one. Take everything. Take everything. From the woman whose crime was saying no. The divorce took 4 months. Rachel Torres was worth every penny of her retainer. She argued successfully that my personal savings, now $14,127.83 untouched, was separate property. The joint account was split. The house, which we'd been renting, wasn't an issue. Brandon kept his 401k contributions from before our marriage. I kept mine. Clean, surgical, final. Karen tried to intervene once. She showed up at Rachel's office unannounced, demanding to speak to whoever is destroying my son's marriage. Rachel's receptionist called security. Karen left, but not before shouting in the parking lot loudly enough that Rachel's paralegal recorded it on her phone. That recording became useful when Karen started telling people I'd robbed Brandon blind. Rachel sent a cease and desist letter that shut that down within a week. Jennifer sent me one final text. I hope you're happy. Mom hasn't stopped crying since you left. I didn't respond. Some sentences don't deserve the energy of a reply. Patricia surprised me. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized in July 2024, I got a handwritten note in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the shaky cursive. Ashley, I've known my sister for 70 years. I love her, but I'm not blind. You did the right thing. Don't let anyone tell you different. P. I taped that note to my bathroom mirror. It's still there. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in Scottsdale. Small, clean, mine. I set up my design studio in the corner of the living room, bought a desk from IKEA, and hung my grandmother's pearl earrings on a little hook by the window where they catch the morning light. My savings account rebuilt faster than I expected. Without the constant drain of Karen's emergencies, without the guilt and the pressure and the emotional tax of living in a war zone, I worked better. I landed 3 new clients in my first month alone. By October, my balance was back above $15,000. Lisa and I had brunch at that place on Mill Avenue, the one we'd missed back in February. She ordered mimosas, and I told her the whole story, start to finish, and she cried and laughed and said, I can't believe you set the table with the fancy plates before dropping the truth bomb. That's the most savage thing I've ever heard. My mom flew out from Columbus for a week in August. She helped me hang curtains and organize my kitchen, and she didn't say, I told you so, once. On her last night, we sat on my tiny balcony drinking wine, and she said, Your grandmother would be so proud of you, Ashley. You swam to shore. I cried, but for the first time in a long time, they were the right kind of tears. Last I heard, Brandon is living with Karen. Back in that ranch house in Mesa, in his old bedroom, with the ceramic angels and the framed photos on every wall. Jennifer told a mutual friend he's working on himself. Maybe he is. I genuinely hope so. But working on yourself while sleeping under your mother's roof, eating her pot roast every night, answering her calls at 7 p.m. sharp, that's not growth. That's a loop. And me? I'm not in a loop anymore. I'm in a line, moving forward, one day at a time, designing logos and saving money and sleeping in a bed that smells like nothing but clean cotton and the lavender spray I bought myself because I like it. The world's best wife mug is in a landfill somewhere. I drink my coffee now from a plain white mug I got at Target for $4. No gold lettering, no chipped paint, nothing to prove. Some mornings I sit at my desk before the sun comes up, working on a project, and I think about that Saturday at noon, the doorbell, the floral blouse, the white plates with the blue rim. I think about Karen's hands holding mine, asking me to apologize. And I think about the word I never said, the word Brandon wanted, the word Karen needed, the word that would have cost me $3,000 and every ounce of self-respect I had left. Sorry. I'm not sorry. I will never be sorry. And if that makes me the villain in the Mitchell family story, then fine. I'll be the villain who kept her savings account, her sanity, and her self-respect. Because my grandmother was right. When someone picks up the oar and starts swinging, you don't apologize for the bruises. You swim to shore, and you don't look back.